The following is a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome in to the game. My name is Alex Baumann, and joined with my co-host today, Nathan Glidewell. As always, we're going to start with AAA, then hop into some college football. Sadly, no Auburn this week for us at least, and Gray. But he's kind of glad, I guess, because he didn't get to watch them lose. But we'll talk about Alabama's game this past weekend, and we're going to hop into a couple other games like USC barely beating Arizona. Not sure how that happened, and then also LSU, Missouri, games like that. And of course, you got to talk about the Red River rivalry between Texas and Oklahoma. So we'll cover countless games. But as always, AAA's first. And the first story we have, non-football related, non-sports related. 6 years after going bankrupt, Toys R Us is making a comeback and will open 24 stores across the United States starting next year. Nathan, do you think this works out for Toys R Us, or are they going to go back to being bankrupt?
The whole thing for me is that they just have to modernize. You think about where kids are nowadays with a bunch of electronics. Not really many kids play with toys nowadays, or at least that's what it seems like. Growing up, we had endless amounts of toys or other crap or stuff like that we would play with. There was no electronics to entertain ourselves with. But nowadays, it's all modernized. So how can Toys R Us adjust to the modern demographic of kids who usually spend a good amount of time either playing video games or watching TV or on their iPad?
Yeah, I think that's going to be a big obstacle for them to overcome. That, and then you got Amazon. I mean, it's so much easier for a kid to go on Amazon and say, hey, mom or dad, I want this. Can you order it on Amazon? And it's easier for the parents themselves for that reason. And they don't have to drive to Toys R Us and waste that gas, which is insane right now, especially not just Alabama where we live, but around the country. I can only assume what California's looking like right now. So, I mean, that's just a big thing. But they're putting them in places like airports and cruise lines and stuff like that. So maybe, maybe that's the way they go. Is they're kind of like the gift shop for airports and stuff like that, where parents, where they're coming home from a trip or something, get their kid a toy and say, here's your gift from where I went on vacation. Maybe that's the route they go. I don't think it's sustainable for them to do what they were doing before they went bankrupt, where they're just like brick and mortar stores around the country where you just go in there and you buy you a toy. They have to pivot, like you said, Nathan, with going more towards electronics that way, or what they're doing now, kind of going into airports or cruise lines. They got to figure out a way to stay alive, because I don't think they can sustain trying to make a second comeback after this one doesn't work. All right, the second and final story for AAA today, it's going to kind of kick off college football discussion. But we've been covering the story for, it feels like 2 months, maybe, Nathan?
2-3 months now, yeah.
Yeah, so the NCAA has reversed its decision, and North Carolina wide receiver Tez Walker has been ruled eligible to play in the 2023 season after new information emerged that NCAA said schools officials failed to provide previously. Worth noting, in his first game as a Tar Heel, Tez Walker had 6 receptions for 43 yards, and UNC got the 40-7 win over Syracuse to stay unbeaten. And Nathan, what are your thoughts on Tez Walker finally getting his eligibility approved and his first game as a Tar Heel?
Well, first of all, he should have gotten his eligibility immediately, but we finally got to this point. The absolute excuse the NCAA used and kind of threw North Carolina under the bus, saying that they didn't provide all the information. That's just a load of crap. I'm sorry. The NCAA saw how everyone reacted to their ruling. They're like, oh, well, this looks like this puts us in a bad image. We gotta bail ourselves out here. So let's go ahead and throw North Carolina under the bus, and then we'll let Tez Walker play. But overall, just happy to have him out there and to watch him perform. I know he was happy to be out there himself. He was pretty excited when he finally got the news from Mac Brown and the other coaches around him. So I think he's definitely made a positive impact on the North Carolina program, and they're looking pretty good right now. They're still undefeated. So maybe with the addition of Tez Walker gives you another big target for Drake May, and that the North Carolina offense, maybe they can, run the table in the ACC and get undefeated, and we'll see from there.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely an opportunity now with Clemson not being where they were. It's really just Florida State and Louisville. I mean, Louisville's pretty much up there. So I think it's Florida State, Louisville, and North Carolina. It's going to be between those three teams. And it's worth noting now we have Gray Oldenburg joining us. So Gray, what are your thoughts on the Tez Walker situation finally being figured out?
Yeah, it's about damn time. I mean, literally, this situation has been drawn out way too much. I agree with what Nathan said. The NCAA just that kind of realized, and then they kind of threw North Carolina under the bus when they said they failed to provide some critical information in the case, which is just absolute crap. So yeah, the NCAA gets thrown to the side on this one. I'm super happy for Tez Walker and his family and for North Carolina to actually get him out on the field. And dude is a difference maker. You know, we saw how successful North Carolina was against Syracuse this week. Not only does he provide another weapon for Drake May, but he provides, you know, you put a playmaker out there like that on an offense with a quarterback like that, it completely changes the entire outlook of the offense and the season. And Alex, you just said, like, this puts North Carolina, if that offense is able to have success like they did against Syracuse this week, this puts North Carolina firmly in that conversation to be an ACC contender and a college football playoff contender.
I don't know about college football playoff just yet. Their defense has to play better. I mean, I know they held Syracuse to 7 points, but that was their Achilles heel last year, and that's what's been their Achilles heel since Mac Brown's been there, with Gene Chizik at the defense coordinator position. But, you know, you never know with the ACC and what goes on right now. All right, moving on to college football games from this past weekend. Starting off, like always, number 11 Alabama goes to College Station and takes on Texas A&M and wins 26-20. Alabama is now in the driver's seat and sole possession of first place in the SEC West. So if they win the rest of their games, they're in. They don't have to worry about it. But they have some difficult games left. They got the Tennessee game, the LSU game, and then really their only last away game in Jordan-Hare at Auburn. So they got to win those 3 games, take care of business, and they're in Atlanta probably taking on Georgia. So, I mean, this game was huge for Alabama to get the win, and they did that. But it wasn't the way we thought they were going to get the win. If we all could sit here and agree, it probably wasn't, because they got it through passing. The rushing attack, the team rushing yards, 26 carries for 23 yards. That is 0.9 yards per carry average. That is awful. That is not what this Alabama team has been about all year. It has been dominance on the running, on the ground in the running game, and it just wasn't there this week. But that's okay, because Jalen Milroe decided he was going to be what we all thought he could be, especially passing the ball. 21-33, 321 yards, 3 passing touchdowns. He did have 1 interception, and then he had 8 carries for negative 31 yards. That adds on with the sacks in there as well. So Jalen Milroe was able to get it down through the air with his go-to guy, Jermaine Burton, the villain of the SEC now. He had 9 receptions for 197 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then that 1 fumble loss that could have been crucial, but ended up not being. And then he also had Isaiah Bond out there, 7 receptions, 96 yards, and a touchdown of his own. So like I said, the passing attack for Alabama looked like it used to, with Bryce Young at the helm, Mac Jones, Tua Tagovailoa. So, I mean, that was good to see that get worked out. A little bit worrisome with the running game, especially Jalen Milroe not being able to get anything going, but that's okay. The defense for Alabama held Texas A&M to 3 points in the second half. They also forced a safety due to intentional grounding, and they held the Texas A&M offense 96 total yards in that second half. So, I mean, the defense kind of struggled in the first half a little bit, finding their footing in College Station, holding all the noise there. But when they did in that second half, I mean, they just took over. 5 sacks, 6 TFLs, an interception by freshman Caleb Downs, and like I mentioned, the safety forced. They also had a blocked field goal that was returned for a touchdown, but called back for a blindside block on Dallas Turner. Kind of a cupcake call, in my opinion. Nathan might go over that when he starts discussing what happened in this game. And overall, I think the defense continues to be the highlight of this team. I mean, Dallas Turner, 1 sack, 1.5 TFLs. Chris Braswell, a sack and TFL on his own. And then one guy that I really was not aware of was going to be this good and this influential on the defense was defensive tackle Tim Keenan III. He led the team in tackles with 8, had a sack and a TFL. He was all over the place. It felt like wherever the ball was, Tim Keenan was there. And then also Caleb Downs, freshman Caleb Downs. He's going to be the next great safety at Bama. He's only a freshman, 5-star. He had 7 tackles, 5 solo, and that really big interception, which I'm not personally sure how he got. I mean, he had to really get in there and contort his body to get the interception and not let it go hit the ground. And that was a big turn of events, because that was, I think, right after the Jalen Milroe interception. So, I mean, that kind of put the momentum back in Alabama's side. and that was one of the main reasons they ended up winning. You look at Texas A&M; they had to play their backup quarterback Max Johnson due to the Connor Weigman injury he suffered, I believe, in the Auburn game. He didn't play great, but he didn't play bad or cause I don't think A&M to lose this game. He was 14-25, 239 yards, a touchdown and interception, and he had -3 yards of his own carrying the football. They tried to get him going in the running game, kind of like Alabama did with Jalen Milroe, and the defense was not having anything about it. The wide receivers for A&M, you had Anai Smith with 88 receiving yards. Then he had that 46-yard punt return that was pretty electric. I thought he was going to take it to the house. And that is where James Burnett, the punter for Alabama, got hurt. And then you had Will Riker come in and finish the duties the rest of the way. I was kind of disappointed in Texas A&M, the fact that they didn't get somebody like Evan Stewart going. I thought he was going to do much more, especially Khalid McKinstry kind of struggling for Alabama this game. And they just really didn't find Evan Stewart as much as they could. He only had 3 receptions for 46 yards. So that was a struggle for him there on the offensive side of the football. But A&M's defense has been where they hang their hat this season, kind of like Alabama has been. You look at A&M's defense, 6 sacks, 8 TFLs, and an interception and then a fumble recovered. The interception and the fumble recovered were both by former five-star Bryce Anderson at safety. So, I mean, safeties for both these teams really stepped up. But you also look at A&M's linebackers and their defensive line. Edger and Cooper, to be more specific, 11 tackles led the team, 3 sacks, 3 TFLs. Dude's a monster. Reminds me a lot of what Von Miller did for A&M back in the day. I think he can be a great guy in the NFL, whether he leaves this season or wherever it happens in the future. I think he's a stud. But then Fadil Diggs was also all over the place. He had 2 sacks and 2 TFLs of his own. So, I mean, the defense for A&M was really good. But when your offense only gets 96 total yards offense in the second half and manages to score a whopping 3 points, you're not going to beat Alabama. I don't care if it's this Alabama team or the Alabama team that went undefeated with Mac Jones and Devonta Smith. It's just not going to happen. Guys, what did y'all see from this game from Alabama that proves they can run the table in the SEC West and continue their winning streak and go on to face, let's say, Georgia? And then what's going on with Texas A&M? I mean, you look at the rest of their schedule. I'm not sure how they win 8 games. I'm really not. Is this the end of Jimbo Fisher? I mean, if he can't win 8 games.
You know, I'll let Gray start because I'm going to have a lengthy discussion of what I saw. So,
you know, this is my first time on here discussing college football this college football season. And watching Alabama every single week, it looks like this Alabama team is getting better and better and better in very specific things each week. And, you know, they're every once in a while they're improving on this or they'll improve on this. Or this week they look really good at this. And this week it really showed Jalen Milroe can throw the ball as, you know, I'm not going to say as effective as the guys that they have in the past, but you relate him to the TV broadcast for CBS related a guy like Jalen Milroe to guys like Blake Sims, to guys like Jake Coker, who are game managers. But we really saw Jalen Milroe take advantage of his arm talent in this game. We know he can run. We know he's a physical runner, but he was really able to do that. And part of that reason was because he had a playmaker really step up in Jermaine Burton. A lot of his 9 catches were those jump balls where he just went up right over the DeBerry cornerback. They were really picking on. Tommy Reeves really identified that matchup and really wanted to pick on him, and they had success through that. You know, we know this Alabama team can run the ball. That A&M defense is also a very, very good rush defense. Same the other way. We know A&M can run the ball. Alabama is a very, very good rush defense. So we didn't see that a lot in this game, but I think you saw the difference in the 2 quarterbacks, and obviously the difference in Max Johnson and Jalen Milroe. You saw the difference in the playmakers because going into this game, I would have said A&M's got the better wide receiver room with Evan Stewart and Anaya Smith and Moose Muhammad. I kind of want to think the other way with that now, with how good Isaiah Bond and Jermaine Burton were and how much they stepped up for a guy like Jalen Milroe in this game. Also, the refs in Alabama gave A&M every single chance to take away this game and blow Alabama out in this game, and they just didn't. And they just didn't. And part of that is success that Alabama had. You know, they took advantage of that, of A&M not taking advantage of their opportunities when they got it. But just like you said, and I know Nathan's going to mention this, that blocked field goal to return for a touchdown, that ends the game. That would have ended the football game. But I know Dallas Turner, I know that was an unbelievably stupid decision on him. The play was 15 yards, but also you don't call that in a game-deciding play like that. So they kept giving A&M chance after chance after chance, and they couldn't do anything with it. I do think, talking about A&M, it's going to be very, very hard after this game to go into Knoxville and win. It's going to be very, very hard for them. I don't know how they stopped Jaden Daniels towards the end of the year against LSU. I don't know how they win 8 games. They've had success, but now without Connor Wigman, you still have that Miami loss, which looks great this week. I don't know how you get there if Jimbo Fisher doesn't get 7 or 8 wins this year with the talent that he has. I know Wigman is out due to injury, but yeah, see ya, Jimbo.
I'm going to go ahead and start with A&M because you got to give them a lot of credit for how tough they played, how they game planned. They knew what they had to do to win this ball game, and unfortunately, they came up short. And it's more of the lack of offense, not really the defense, because I think the defense did a terrific job getting a lot of pressure on Jalen Morrow, really forcing him to make throws that really all of college football thought he couldn't make after watching going back to the Texas game. And Joe Morrow comes out in this game, and he just looks like a completely different player. He looked a little bit more comfortable in the pocket than he usually does. Really kept his eyes on the field when the pocket did collapse, and he was able to make some big time throws. Jermaine Burton really helping him out, being that playmaker for him. Isaiah Bond got some of his too. The running game has to improve. That was probably some of the worst running I've ever seen. And that step one, it has to start with the offensive line and what they do, because the offensive line, I know how physical A&M's defensive line is. You got to be the bigger team here. You got to have a little bit more tenacity when it comes to run blocking. And I just didn't see it from the offensive line. Not to mention the hundreds of mistakes they made, false start penalties, holding, stuff like that. And then just blatantly giving up sacks. It's not all on them. Joe Morrow has to identify pressure and change up protections, but a lot of it starts with the offensive line, and I think that's the main spot Alabama has left to improve, because let's be honest, on the defensive end, this might be the best defense in the country. And for the fact that everyone, before this game, pre-week, they were identifying A&M, saying this is the best defense. This is the better offense. This is a better special teams. This is a better team all around. We think that this team should win. Chris Storing on SEC Network,
don't even show
biggest clown I've ever seen. Dude needs to go ahead and retire. Dude doesn't need to speak on college football ever again. Brandon Walker with Barstool, he needs to go ahead and pack it up. What a joke. What a joke. I'm sorry. It really gets on my nerves. All these people wanting to talk on teams like they don't know what's going on. And then you come out and you have Alabama completely prove you wrong, because Alabama had the better defense in this game. They got after that Texas A&M offense. I will tell you now, if you ask Matt Johnson, who played better defense, he would have said Alabama, because every single time he dropped back to throw the ball, he had to go back 5-10 yards just to be able to chunk it down the field. That's how good Alabama's defensive line is. And that's surprising to say, because they struggled to get pressure all year long. But I don't know. Justin Eboigbe, he has been something else. He has gotten after the quarterback. Dallas Turner is playing out of his mind. Chris Braswell. I mean, you can continue to find guys on this defense who want to do something big. I mean, Caleb Downs is going to be an elite safety. There is so many things on this defense that I'm just so surprised about. And Kevin Steele, you got to tip your hat to him, man. He has done a terrific job. Because last year with Pete Golding, he had some of the same guys, and we all saw how that turned out. So a lot of credit to Kevin Steele and what he's been able to do. And yeah, start giving credit to Tommy Rees, because he's put Jalen Morrow in a position to kind of be comfortable and to get adjusted to what kind of offense they run. But really, really hard win. To speak on the refs and what they did in this game, really, really surprising. I mean, I think we'll talk about the biggest call being on the block field goal, return for a touchdown. Dallas Turner, blindside block. It was barely a block. He nudged him. He barely touched him at all, and they called that crap. Not to mention after that, when Alabama had to punt the ball back to him, them absolutely moving in and down the field. And I will say this: Alabama still somehow managed to hold them to 3 because of they rolled him out of bounds at the 3-yard line. But man, the rest had to be better. I don't think A&M might have had one holding call, but you'll go back and watch the whole broadcast. You can pick out several different plays where there were multiple holding calls that should have been called. I mean, game-changing things. So SEC officiating needs to be better. But I'm just impressed with this Alabama team as a whole. And, you just got to – you're halfway through the year. You got to continue playing some of your best football, and you got to keep getting better every week because, let's be honest, it doesn't get easier. You have Tennessee still, LSU. You go on the road at Kentucky. I know they are coming off that tough loss to Georgia, but they're still a pretty good football team. And then you had to go on the road to Auburn. So a lot of different things that I still need to see. But Alabama, they run the table. Go back to the SEC championship. You face probably a team in Georgia because, let's be honest, the rest of the SEC East just can't really do anything. And you'll see after that. So it's been interesting to watch this team so far.
Yep, week by week basis, keep improving. That's all you got to do for Alabama. Show some improvement, and they've been doing that week in and week out. Outside of the USF game, that's an anomaly. As I mentioned earlier when we started, Auburn was on a bye this week, so no game there, but they do face LSU this week. They've got a big game for them. I'm not sure how it's going to work out for Auburn if Jaden Daniels continues to play the way he's been playing. Maybe the defense for LSU can just walk Auburn into the end zone like they did Ole Miss a couple weeks ago. You had UAB take on USF and beat them 56-35, scoring many more points than Alabama did when they played USF. So go UAB, good positive there. The one thing UAB did get going was the ground game with Jermaine Brown Jr. He had 116 yards rushing and the 4 touchdowns. Watching UAB the past couple of years under a guy like Bill Clark, the running game was what they were known for. I mean, they would have 2 running backs come in and each have 150 yards rushing, and the quarterback would kind of just have 150 yards passing. And with Trent Dilfer, it's kind of been flipped a different way where the passing game's been really the main focus and the running game's taking a back seat. So it was good to kind of see the running game get back under control and kind of be the main focal point in a win, especially. Talking about Jacksonville State, they did get the win against Middle Tennessee State, 45-30, and Jacksonville State is now 5-1, and then 3-0 in Conference USA, their first year in that conference. So kudos to Jacksonville State, and once again they came back from down a major halftime deficit to win this game. All right, let's talk about the Red River rivalry here, guys. Oklahoma taking on Texas. Oklahoma ended up winning that game 34-30 in a walk-off touchdown, basically from Dylan Gabriel to Nick Anderson for a 3-yard touchdown with 15 seconds left. If you watch that play over again, there was some miscommunication on the back end of Texas's defense where the guy did not shift over and cover Nick Anderson, who motioned that way, and he was just kind of left alone in the back of the end zone. But Dylan Gabriel made a heck of a throw with pressure in his face. So, I mean, good job, Oklahoma. Texas, this was Texas's year to get to the college football playoff, and it's not over yet. I mean, we say this every week when a team loses their first game. It's one loss. You run the table, you win the rest of your games, you go to the Big 12 championship. Let's say you take on Oklahoma and you beat them, then I think you're in at that point, depending on what happens to the rest of the games, and a win. If you barely beat somebody like TCU, then obviously there's going to be some questions there. But Texas is not over yet. Quinn Ewers kind of played a very terrible first half, had some uncharacteristic turnovers. But overall, I mean, Oklahoma, we kind of wrote them off at the beginning of the year. Didn't think they were going to do much. Thought Brett Venables might probably lose his job, but he's coached great this season, better than his former mentor, Dabo Swinney. So, I mean, Oklahoma can run the table this year. And I'm not going to say college football playoff for Oklahoma because it was just one game and they beat Texas. But maybe. Guys, what did y'all make of this game?
You know, this was the most Red River rivalry game I've ever seen in my life. If you know what I mean, this was offensive, jam-packed. This game was kind of like on drugs, especially towards the beginning of the game. games that started at the same time of it were 15, 20 minutes of game time ahead of it because of the TV timeouts and all the random stuff they had to review. And they got the block punt for a touchdown and the interceptions. This was the most Red River rivalry I've ever seen. But yeah, hats off to Oklahoma and Brett Venables. This was a well-coached game from them. And Dylan Gabriel really proved that he was, I wouldn't say the better quarterback in this game, because I do think Quinn Ewers is the better quarterback. I think Ewers just made those early mistakes, and Texas wasn't able to get back from that. But both teams did play really well, I think. But Dylan Gabriel just made the final play. And you kind of got that feeling, and you always do in the Red River rivalry, unless it's a blowout, which, that's very Red River rivalry as well. You had the idea this entire ball game, especially in the second half, with, whoever's got the last possession and the last chance, they're probably going to win, because that's how those two offenses were playing. And I know this wasn't a 48-45 game like we've seen in the past from these two teams, but this was a high-scoring game considering these two offenses. And Oklahoma just made the final play, but hats off to them. I don't think it's over for Texas. I still really like Texas as a team. I think they have two very impressive wins, with the blowout win against Kansas and the win in Bryant-Denny Stadium against Alabama. So, they could make a strong case if they go out and run the table, just like you said, Alex, beat Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship if that were the case. So it isn't over for them. We're talking about college football playoff here. But again, a huge win for Oklahoma. Really, this is a program-defining win for Brett Venables in his second year.
Yeah, you got to give a lot of credit to Oklahoma and how physical they were in this game. Texas came out, punched them right in the mouth. Oklahoma wiped the blood from their mouth and punched right back a few times. And I think it's just a lot about Oklahoma's defense and the way they've been built by Brett Venables. I know last year it wasn't even close to how physical it is now, but they really get after it. They really got after this Texas offense, forced 3 turnovers, which is really the whole thing that changed the game. Even when Oklahoma couldn't find success on offense, especially you go back to how they had the block punt in the end zone, and they gave up that. Oklahoma, they didn't get down. They showed adversity, and they fought back. And you got to give a lot of credit to Texas in this game, because they put themselves in the situation to win, kicking that last-minute field goal and going up 30-27. It's just the simple fact that Dylan Gabriel, he was clutch in that last drive. It looked Bryce Young-esque to me. He just found the open receiver and really took advantage of the Texas defense, giving a lot of cushion to his receivers. Made the right reads, and at the end of the day, found his guy in the end zone for the touchdown. And really, they just took care of business. I will say, Oklahoma, if they want to make a run at the college football playoff, they got to improve the running game. I know their running back had 2 touchdowns in this game, but I felt like their offensive line really didn't get a lot of push up front. And that's saying a lot, because they had to go against Texas, and that defensive front for Texas, they got after Alabama's offensive front. So I think Texas is a really good defensive team. They're a really good team all around. It's just the mistakes came back to bite you, and really that's the whole reason you lost this game. If you eliminate the mistakes, I see Texas walking out of here with a win. So really close game. Both these teams, honestly, if this is next year and we had the 16 team playoff, whatever it is, I think both these teams make it.
I don't know about that one, because Quinn Ewers might not be at Texas anymore.
I mean, but if we had it this year,
if we had it this year, they definitely probably both be in there. All right, moving on to a game I mentioned when we started. Number 9 USC taking on Arizona in the Pac-12 after dark. 43-41 was the final score in 3 overtime, and USC ended up winning that game on one of the worst 2-point conversion calls I've seen on back-to-back possessions. USC's they converted. I'm not really sure how. It was kind of like the Dak Prescott NFC champion or NFC divisional round thing they tried to do with Ezekiel Elliott at center, where they just had him at center and then Dak Prescott do whatever. And I'm not sure what happened there. I mean, Caleb Williams made magic and he scored the 2-point conversion. And then Arizona turns around, and their quarterback's the reason they're winning this game. A freshman in his second career start. He is outplaying Caleb Williams, and you need a 2-point conversion. And we run a toss sweep A toss sweep. And this is the last play of the game. You run a toss sweep, and USC blows it up, and you get nowhere. Nowhere. Arizona, I don't know what they're doing. I personally thought they should have gone for 2 in the first overtime and just won the game. That, especially against a team like USC, that's what you got to do. You can't keep taking body blows from them and punching back and everything, because when you play somebody like USC who has Caleb Williams at quarterback, they're going to find a way to beat you regardless if their defense is awful like it is. Guys, what did you see from this game, especially from USC, that proves that they are a fraudulent team? Because I think we all three sitting here can agree that if Caleb Williams is not on this roster, there is no doubt this team would probably have 2 losses right now.
Yeah, if Caleb Williams wasn't on this roster, and I'll even throw Mario Williams is not on this roster as well. If those 2 guys are not on this USC team, they don't get invited to the Big Ten. They're so bad. Look, the defense is terrible. Arizona was picking them apart the entire game, especially that quarterback in his second career start threw for 300 yards and 5 touchdowns. He only made 1 mistake. I watched the entire game, and it was that 1 interception. He threw it right to him. But what was this game? USC does not deserve to be even close to the top 10. I know Caleb Williams is unbelievable, and Caleb Williams instantly puts them in games that they shouldn't belong in. And this is one of them. And this is exactly one of them. Arizona, if Caleb Williams, if they've got an average quarterback, if UFC has an average quarterback in this game, Arizona blows them out. It's not even close. It'll get up to 17-0, and they don't have Caleb Williams, so they just kind of shut down. And Arizona blows them out. Because Arizona was clicking on all cylinders in that first quarter, and it was fun to watch. But yes, Caleb Williams is unbelievable. Yes, he's going to be the number 1 pick of the draft. Yes, I cannot wait to watch him in the future in the NFL. But no, this USC team is not it, and they're not a playoff contender whatsoever.
Watching this USC team, and I'll start with their offense, because their offense had a slow start. They struggled to find success early on in this game versus Arizona, and they come out and they make adjustments. And Caleb Williams finds throws he's comfortable making, and really took advantage of the coverage Arizona was playing. And he was able to find areas where he could run the ball when the play broke down. So you got to give credit to Caleb Williams and the offense for making adjustments as the game went on. And that just tells you how good Caleb Williams is at quarterback. Obvious number 1 pick. I don't think anyone comes close anymore. But this USC defense, bozos, absolute bozos. Worst defense I've seen play in a long time. It's a whole let everyone through Oprah Winfrey style defense, I guess, because they just let Arizona march it down the field every single time they touch the ball. Basically, Arizona found success throwing the ball, running the ball. They could have laid down the field and rolled 100 yards down the field and would have scored, because I don't think USC would have been able to make an adjustment that way. Awful defense. Lincoln Riley, awful head coach. He made 0 personnel adjustments from what I saw on the defensive end. And if that's the best guys they have playing out there, sorry. How are you USC, a university that can pretty much recruit anyone in the country, and you can't find competent people on defense? Awful. Playoffs, forget about it. Forget about the rest of the season, basically, because you still got to play Oregon. You still got to play Washington. No. 2 teams that will have their day with you. I mean, they will march you up and down the field every single time. If you thought Arizona was bad, this is going to be 10 times more awful. And both those teams also have a pulse on defense. Oregon, I think they're probably the best team in the Pac-12. They'd be my favorite to come out. But I guess we'll see with this upcoming week when they go and take on Washington in Washington. So, but USC, if they just had a little bit of a defense, I'd say they're playoff contenders just as Caleb Williams. And I'm not saying they aren't right now, but it's a long season. And if I don't see any improvement from that defense, you can go and forget about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, moving on to some upsets from this past week. You had Georgia Tech beat number 17 Miami 23-20. And what was the weirdest, dumbest ending to a football game I think I've ever seen. Instead of kneeling and running the clock out, Miami opted to run the ball and handed it to running back Don Chaney. And instead of taking the knee, obviously, and he fumbled the ball. Georgia Tech got the opportunity to put together the game-winning drive with, I believe, like 47 seconds left. And somehow, A&M transfer Haynes King did so, and he found Alabama transfer Christian Lyric, wide receiver. He got behind the defense and caught the 44-yard touchdown pass with 2 seconds left. I'm not sure what Mario Cristobal was doing. Dude just had to take a knee, and the game was over. That's it. Just take a knee, get out of there, and you're undefeated still. Instead, you run the ball, fumble it, and now you have a loss to Georgia Tech. Dude just needs to pack it up. Just go on home, Mario Cristobal. Your time at Miami. I mean, this was like kind of at a lesser extent to Texas. This is Miami's year to be good. The ACC is down outside of Florida State, really. I mean, Clemson's down. You have new teams in there like Louisville and North Carolina kind of figuring it out. This is Miami's year to kind of contend in the ACC. And you go ahead and you lose to Georgia Tech of all teams. Georgia Tech is not good. Haynes King, I think, isn't playing okay, but you should not let Haynes King, of all people, have a game-winning drive on your defense. No reason. I don't know what was going on there, guys.
Yeah. This exact same thing happened to Mario Cristobal when he was at Oregon. He opted not to kneel it. And in Stanford, I believe it was Stanford.
It was Stanford.
They fumbled it and got the ball back and won the game. First of all, how do you not learn from that? When you're at Oregon in your first year coaching as a head coach, I don't know if it was his first year, but his first job, how do you not learn from that? And then, yeah, just like you said, Alex, this was year for Miami to be good. They had a really, really good home win against Texas A&M where they dropped 48 on one of the better defenses in the SEC, if not the country. And they just fumbled the season away by not kneeling the ball against Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech is horrific. They're terrible. Haynes King has played better than I thought he would. But seriously, this was the most laughable, most Miami, most Mario Cristobal thing I've ever seen. And I don't know how the Miami administration goes back to office today, goes back to their office and say, yep, Mario Cristobal still needs to be our head coach. How does that happen? He just lost the game for you. He literally lost the game for you because you cannot blame that on Don Chaney at all. No Miami fan nor anybody in the country needs to blame that on that running back. Yes, he was being held up. Yes, that Georgia Tech is obviously trying to knock the ball out. And yes, he needs to hold on to the ball, but that is not on him. That is on the head coach. That is on the offensive coordinator. That is on everybody. Even Tyler Van Dyke. How do you not say, no, we need to take a knee? You're the quarterback. You're like a returning starter at quarterback. I'm sure you have some authority in that play calling and audibles and that sort of thing. Most returning starting quarterbacks do. Oh my gosh. I'm left speechless after this. I thought it was the funniest thing ever as a non-Miami fan. Congratulations to Georgia Tech, though.
I think it's worth noting the Georgia Tech team was coming off a loss to Bowling Green at home. That's how bad they are. And Miami, you were undefeated. You had a great win against the Texas A&M team. You looked like you were almost back, and then you just crap your pants on national television. Crapped it. I mean,
sloshed by North Carolina.
This is just horrible. I don't understand how you put your team in a position to win a game, and then you say, well, I don't think we like winning all that much. Being undefeated, that's overrated. Going and winning the ACC, we don't need to do that. Let's go ahead and give Georgia Tech a win. That's basically what Mario Cristobal did in this game. No words. Worst managed game I've ever seen. And I watched Jimbo Fisher manage the game versus Alabama.
Bozo alert for Mario Cristobal. Put him on the Jimbo Fisher bus. Some other upsets, you had number 25 Louisville beat number 10 Notre Dame 33-20. Running back for Louisville, Jawar Jordan, 21 carries, 143 yards and 2 touchdowns. Stud, he had a big running play in that game he was pretty electric. He just hit the hole on me and he was gone. There was nobody touching him. For Notre Dame, you had quarterback Sam Hartman throw 3 interceptions. Very uncharacteristic of him, but those 3 interceptions were kind of costly and ended up losing Notre Dame the game. Other upsets, you had UCLA beat number 13 Washington State 25-17. Washington State's offensive line could not block anybody. It was awful if you watched that game. Then you had Wyoming beat number 24 Fresno State 24-19. Fresno State was if the season ended today before this loss, would be in the New Year's Six Bowl, but after this loss, they're not in it anymore. So that was a big hit to their chances there. Then you had Oklahoma State beat Kansas State 29-21. I'm not sure what Kansas State's doing. I think Nathan had him in his Big 12 championship, or maybe Gray did.
It was Gray.
That awful team, awful. I don't know what happened. Will Howard's supposed to be good. It's like you lose Deuce Vaughn and the whole offense craps its pants. I don't know what's going on there. Some other storylines from around the country. You had number 1 Georgia destroy number 20 Kentucky 51-13 behind Kentucky's defense, making Carson Beck look like the best quarterback Georgia's ever had. I don't know how you do that. He had 389 yards, 4 touchdowns, and then 1 interception. This was supposed to be the year. It feels like every year this is the year Kentucky's going to get Georgia, and every year Kentucky just doesn't do it. They just disappear. What a bunch of bozos. And another game, despite being tied 10-10 at halftime, number 4 Ohio State pulls away from Maryland to win 37-17. So a prediction from last week that Maryland was going to win this game fell short, unfortunately. Ohio State wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr., 8 receptions, 163 yards and a touchdown. And then Maryland quarterback Talia Tagovailoa, 21-41, 196 yards, a touchdown, and then 2 interceptions. And he also had a rushing touchdown on the ground. I think if Maryland would have won this game, Talia would have had play a lot better than this and not throw interceptions. That was the big thing. He had to play 1,000 times better. He had to have a 350 passing yard game and have 3-4 touchdowns and maybe 1 turnover at max. And that just didn't happen. Arkansas loses again, 27-20 to number 16 Ole Miss. Falls to 2-4 overall, and then 0-3 in SEC play. Guys, just real quick, who finished this last in the SEC West this year? Arkansas, Auburn, or Mississippi State? Of those 3, who finishes last?
Mississippi State.
Mississippi State.
You think so?
Yeah.
I know so.
All right. Do you think Arkansas, even if they don't finish last, Sam Pittman's out the door?
Yes.
At this point?
Well, I said last week that you got to give him more time, but I don't know how much more time you can give him when you just go and just lose, because Arkansas was in position to win this game several different times and it just didn't. So I don't know. At some point you might have to tell him go and pack your bags. Even though I like Sam Pittman a lot, and I think he's a pretty decent head coach. He's not getting it done right now.
Yeah. He's definitely a cool dude. That clip where he says you can get him old cold beer. I mean, I love that clip. He's definitely a funny guy, but when you can't get it on the field, it's just not going to happen. And then the last thing, number 23 LSU gets a crucial pick 6 for Major Burns to escape with a 49-39 win over number 21 Missouri. It was a pretty wild game until the end. Missouri was in the driver's seat and then kind of fell apart in the fourth quarter. Look at LSU, quarterback Jaden Daniels, 15-21, 259 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and then added 130 rushing yards and then a rushing touchdown on the ground. And then running back for LSU, Logan Diggs, 24 carries, 134 yards and a touchdown. And then Malik Neighbors, 6 receptions, 146 yards and a touchdown. That 3-headed monster there has been going off all season. And if they didn't have those 2 losses, I would say LSU is one of the best teams in the country, but you have 2 losses, and I can't really claim that right now because your defense is awful. Then you look at Missouri, Brady Cook, 30-47, 411 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Running back Cody Schrader, 13 carries, 114 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And then stud wide receiver Luther Burden, 11 receptions, 149 yards. The 2 interceptions from Brady Cook ended up being costly for Missouri and giving them this loss. All right, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for listening and watching, students of the game.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio.